How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me, as usual, is Leonard. This is a show about wrestling, but this week we are bringing you a very, very first movie review for all of you out there. We wanted to do this when it was close to Oscars, as this was undoubtedly a Oscar snub from that year.
Well, it's a TV movie, so that would have been Emmys.
I think they could have made an exception at the Academy Awards.
Mm-hmm.
But we are going to be doing a movie review. Every now and then we might bring you one of these obscure movie titles that features a pro wrestler. And, we've all heard of the movies starring Hulk Hogan, Suburban Commando, that kind of thing, or The Rock and all the movies he did. We've heard of the Marine franchise, all of that. But you might not remember one of the movies from the year 2000 starring Steve Borden. That's right, Sting, in a movie called Shutterspeed. Now, before we get to the movie itself, let's just take you back to the year 2000, just to kind of put yourself back in that time and place, Leonard.
And it should be mentioned that he's credited as Steve Borden.
Yes, and well, we'll get there.
Okay.
For WCW, this was this movie was released on TNT February 11th, 2000. For WCW, it would be between the sold out pay-per-view and the uncensored pay-per-view. Sid Vicious was the champion around this time, Leonard. And for WWE, they were in the midst of probably one of the greatest rivalries ever. And that would be between Royal Rumble and No Way Out. Triple H and Cactus Jack had just had their street fight at Royal Rumble, and were heading towards that Hell in the Cell, which was for Mick Foley's career, at least the first time. So that's what's going on in the wrestling end of things. Now, Sting was not around WCW television during this time. He had his last pay-per-view, I believe, was WCW Mayhem in '99. He had a feud with, I think it was Luger, around that time, and we wouldn't see him back again until March. I don't know if this coincides, like he had, there was like an injury angle on screen which took him off. I don't know if this coincides with this or not. I know his daughter Gracie was born in 2000, so he might have taken a few months off for that. Who knows? But he was kind of off TV around this time that this was released. Now, for the Oscars, Leonard, here's something that hasn't dated well. What won Best Picture in 2000? Do you know off the top of your head?
Is it Crash?
No, it is American Beauty.
Oh, okay.
It's a movie that most people say has not aged well, and neither has the winner of Best Actor that year, Kevin
Spacey. Yeah.
Yeah. So that takes you back to the year 2000, just to give you an idea of when this movie came out. And it is
direct. I was also like to talk about the year is that I watched the version that's on YouTube, which has the original commercials in it.
It does. Now, I fast forwarded through those. If you didn't,
oh no, I watched them.
Of course you did. I'm anxious to hear what was there, because after I realized that, like, I think it's like a good half hour before the first commercial break comes on, and I was just like, okay, no, I'm not doing this, because it's like near 2 hours if you don't. Like,
yes. Well, I love these old commercials. I mean, the commercials are like for long distance calling cards and a college kid living on Papa John's pizza. So that takes me back to my college years.
Were you also living on Papa John's pizza?
I was living on Papa John's pizza. There was one right up the road from the apartment I had with a friend.
All right.
And we used to get coupons, and we would live on Papa John's pizza. And the only commercials, and there were several that are very dated, was for like the long distance calling numbers.
Yeah.
Like the 800 ATT collect or whatever. Those were the only really dated ones. Others were regular commercials you would expect, nothing that crazy.
Well, hold that thought on the commercials. I'll just say this: it's directed by Mark Sobel, and executive producers, I'm sure you noticed, Leonard, Eric Bischoff and Jason Hervey.
Yes.
This was back when, I know Bischoff and Hervey still are friends. I don't know that they still make shows together to this.
I know they did that energy drink. I can't remember what it was called, but that was like a episode of Hogan's Knows Best that they went to Hogan and tried to get him to endorse their energy drink.
Yeah, well, Hogan has not had the best history with what he chooses to endorse.
Yeah.
You know,
And it should be said while we're here too, this was a TNT original movie, and there was some synergy between WCW and Turner Broadcasting,
right?
because Hogan did several movies for them and TV show Thunder in Paradise.
Yep. Yeah.
So this was, I'm not sure what else that they did during this period, but this is definitely part of that synergy, trying to use a WCW star to be in an original film for them.
Yeah, and Eric Bischoff has talked about on his podcast, this is obviously well in the middle of the AOL Time Warner merger, which, to hear it from Bischoff was kind of the long death knell for the company. And, they would have to promote a lot of stuff on the TNT end of things. And so yes, there were a lot of movies around this time that would probably not many people remember, but I remember one of my favorites, so bad it's good, was I think it's something called Shadow Island, or with Hogan and Shannon Tweed. Hogan doesn't have a full beard or a mustache, which is why I remember it.
Yes, and I believe Carl Weathers was in that too. Yes. I think there was two of those. It was like it was either Shadow Island or Devil's Island or something like that, and I believe there was
Assault on Devil's Island. Is that it?
Yes, Assault on Devil's Island. That's what it was. I believe there was a sequel as well. And I always thought those were just like Thunder in Paradise spinoffs because they look like Thunder in Paradise.
Yeah.
I don't think they were. I think they were separate but similar. But
yes.
I always thought they were the same. While we're here, I will mention to ever tell you I met Chris Lemon.
Who is that?
Chris Lemon is the co-star of Thunder in Paradise.
Oh, that's cool.
He played Brew, and he's Jack Lemon's son.
That makes sense.
And he was at a movie convention up in Cleveland, and Dan had given me the DVD box set of like the Thunder in Paradise movies. Nice. And Chris Lemon's not on it, but I was gonna get Chris Lemon to sign it. And it's just a big picture of Hogan, and there's like a speedboat in the back. And Dan says you should ask him if that's him driving the boat, Chris Lemon, because it's like this little bitty image. And I asked him, and he laughs and he looks. He's like, no. You see the little guy next to the guy driving the boat? That's me. Because he says I know what these pictures are from, because it was the first day that we'd gone out and we did a bunch of like still photos and B-roll stuff. And he said Hogan was really driving the boat because Hogan could drive a boat.
Right.
And he said they were coming up, and the water got choppy, and they hit a wave, and they popped in the air as a helicopter was coming down for a shot. And Hogan turned the boat so they would miss the helicopter, or they would have went right into the helicopter. And then Chris Lemon looks at me, takes a beat, looks at me, and he says, Hulk Hogan, great boat driver, better friend.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear positive things about Hogan every once in a while. Yeah, so I should mention about the commercials as well. One of the things that annoyed me, it's not involving the plot, was the fact that at the end of all the commercial breaks, you would see clips for what was coming in the movie. That is just a little thing, but it annoyed me to no end. So just wanted to throw that out there. So let's go over the plot. Since we are all in the year 2000 now. So it follows Riley Davis. That is who Sting plays. He has a brother named Cliff Davis. They are Seattle police detectives. Riley is in narcotics, and Cliff was recently promoted to homicide. And they are estranged brothers. The estrangement is due to a former case that went wrong that involved both of them and their police officer father. What happens is the brothers end up working together on a case of a model who was murdered, Mark Pearson, who is the brother of Riley's fiance, Kenzie Pearson, who is also a model who works for the same agency. And before Mark died, he mysteriously left Riley a camera with only one shot taken on the roll of film. So the plot on IMDb kind of goes on and on from there. But we'll talk about some of the details. So, yeah, this probably wouldn't have been a big ratings boost for TNT around this time. I probably should have researched what the rating was, but
Yeah, that would have been smart. Only I remember it being on. I didn't watch it at the time. I remember it being on. I would think only your WCW fans, and that base was certainly dwindling at that point, probably would have watched this.
yeah. And so it's filmed. This was filmed in Canada, and it takes place in Seattle. And it doesn't take anybody who's even visited Seattle to realize that this is not Seattle in any way, because it's extremely nice. It's and bright in this movie, which Seattle normally is not. But so there's a reason that we haven't seen Sting act in many movies. Now, let me just say this before we go on some of the specific scenes of the movie. Like, when it came to just being the action stuff or the cop stuff, it doesn't take a world-class thespian to do that. I thought he was straightforward and okay, of the Brian Bosworth ilk of talent, Leonard.
Sure.
So I didn't mind those, but there are at least 2 or 3 scenes in this movie that are drama scenes, and boy, oh boy, when those scenes hit, it's tough, Leonard. It's tough to get through. Please tell me that I know you had tough time getting through it.
I did. I probably lost interest after about the first 20 minutes or so.
Okay. Yeah.
Like once they got everything set up, yeah, and none of the actors are good. Let's say that. The girlfriend is Daisy Fuentes from
I was going to
MTV.
get there. Yeah, she was really big in my high school years.
Oh yeah, and she's the only real other notable name in the movie. Everybody else I didn't recognize. If I don't recognize somebody from something, that means that they didn't do much or had much of a notable career.
Right.
And I would say there isn't any really decent or good acting in this film. And yeah, a lot of it's not the fact that it's necessarily bad, but a lot of the drama sequences are just dull. They're just boring. It's like we have to say these lines and we're just saying the lines.
There's faux crying on Sting's end, and boy, it's just the Crow character worked for him because it was the silent, kind of cold type of character, man of few words. And you mentioned Daisy Fuentes. What bothered me right off the bat was, so you have, this is set in Seattle, you have a model, and let's just give the benefit of the doubt. Apparently Daisy Fuentes' character Kenzie is a good, famous in that area model. And she's married to a cop.
Well, they're engaged. They get married at the end of the film.
I'm sorry, you're right. They are engaged.
At the very end of the film, and at the wedding, she's dressed like a stripper.
Yeah.
But
and they have this gorgeous house. Like, he's a cop in Seattle. She's a model, and it's like, boy, this is the life, isn't it? If you're a cop, did he not? I'll say this though, Sting looked good in this era. With the hair and he was built in this movie, certainly bigger than anybody else in the movie. So he looked good and healthy, and it's just he and Daisy Fuentes, and the setup that they do to introduce the fact that they're together at the beginning of the movie was cringeworthy.
Yeah. Well, but they do the same thing twice. They do so in the very
yes.
Yeah, so in the very beginning of the movie, when we first meet Sting, he's trailing a pregnant woman, and the split second you see this, it's a dude in drag. You cannot not know it's a dude in drag. And he follows her into a bathroom, and it looks like he's going to first rob her and then kill her, but it's a drug dealer smuggling cocaine in a false belly is what it is, and he's a cop. So that is, this isn't what you thought it was.
And he did the very next thing, which was stab her belly full of coke.
Yes, of course. That's how you would do it in a very dramatic fashion. And then the very next scene is you see him on his motorcycle, and he's up against this red car who is speeding, and he's chasing this woman, and then she dusts him. Then he finds her, and the first thing I'm thinking of is, how did he find her? And then he goes in and winds up, basically making out with her. And it seems like, oh, these are two strangers that met and are hot for each other. And then you find out it's the same thing. It's the same gimmick twice. Oh, this isn't what you thought it was.
Yes.
And both scenes are set up in a very contrived fashion that don't make any logical sense. These people would not behave in this way.
Right, correct. And the whole plot surrounds this camera and what was on the shot. And one of the issues from a critic point of view that I had with this was it took way, way too long to get to the payoff of what was on this camera that was so sought after.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to spoil it here. They were customs clearance codes were on there, which I thought could be more of an interesting plot thread. Like if they had done more with that, I think that would have been interesting.
Well,
Well,
here's the question to you. What were they smuggling?
One would assume it looked like counterfeit money.
Yeah, because they never say. I don't think they ever directly say what they were smuggling. They do, and I do like that. I thought that was the most clever part of the script was the custom clearance codes. I've never seen that in a film before, I don't think.
Right, and it's like an interesting, wow, I never even thought of that as a thing to get through with illegal goods.
Yeah, my question would be, how do they get them, and then how do you get them on the packages?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I would think you would need an inside man at the airport.
That's true. Yeah, you would. Well, yeah, you would have to, or you would have to bet on them not inspecting your bags, just seeing the code and.
Yeah, scan the code or whatever they do with it, and then not go on. I did think that was clever. Now, since we're talking about the camera, let me say this: it's 2000. This is a film camera. Digital cameras existed.
Yeah. They make it seem like this is the 1980s.
This movie feels at least 10 years older than when it was made. It feels like 1990 in the film. Because, Sting does have a flip phone, but at the beginning of the movie, they're leaving messages on a home answering machine.
Right.
That's a plot point. And then later he does have a cell phone. But the thing with the camera, I was interning in news at this time, newspaper, and they were all on digital photography at this point.
Right.
There was no dark room, there was no film anymore. You could still get it. And the thing was, since the film wasn't the big point, it was the microfilm hidden underneath the dial of the camera.
Right.
You could have done that with a digital camera.
Right.
Yeah. Also, did you recognize this? This is the same plot as Crocodile Dundee 2.
Okay. I did not remember that. You're more versed in that franchise than I.
Yes, yes. So in Crocodile Dundee 2, the woman whose name I forget, but who's Crocodile Dundee's girlfriend, her ex-husband sends her a camera with film, and he gets killed, and then the bad guys kidnap her, and Mick has to save her. But this wasn't anything hidden. It was just pictures proving that this guy was running drugs, is what it was. So there was drug running involved.
And
but the same basic
came out before this.
Yes. That would have been 88. I think it was 88.
Okay.
But it was the same basic plot structure as Crocodile Dundee 2. So I don't know if anyone consciously knew that, or that was just something that came up.
Somebody got high and watched.
Yeah, let's rip off a movie. And no one would ever let's rip off a movie that no one would ever figure out that we're ripping off, except for me.
Well, so let me say one thing that disappointed me. When I first saw the movie, one of the Rock's early movies was The Rundown, and that was a decent action flick for what it was. And because it was an early movie with him, there were Rock signature wrestling moves in the movie. And I am going to spoil something for all of you. There is no Scorpion Death Drop in Shutterspeed. There is no Scorpion Death Lock. There's no splash. There's none of that. And damn it, when you're having a TV movie starring Sting, you already know it's not going to be an award-worthy picture. Put something in there for the wrestling fans so that we can at least pretend we enjoyed it.
Yeah. That would have been awesome if he just started, if he gets into like a fight with the bad guys and just starts scorpion death dropping everybody.
Just everyone. That would have been great. One thing in this movie that I did think was funny, and actually somewhat creative, was there was a scene where before Mark dies, the Mark character, he's being tortured for info, and the guys torturing him just listen to his messages and realize who they need to go to next because it's on the messages of his phone.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's great because he's like, no, I'm not telling you anything. No, I'm not, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden the messages come on the phone and it's like, tells them everything they need to know. Well, we don't need you anymore. Another thing that should be mentioned, there is a woman who's a dog walker for them, who's a friend.
Yeah, another
dog
model,
walker,
a model in training, I think. Yeah.
Model in training who's their dog walker, their dog sitter during the day. And she gets what is known as fridged. So she exists only to die. She gets drowned in a bathtub.
Right.
And this is some of the most cringy stuff in the movie because not only do you have Sting trying to react to this, but the crime scene photographer that Sting knows, he had set her up with this guy, so had dated her. Yeah, basically they don't say it, but they had sex. They went out once and they banged, and that was it.
Yeah.
But this guy is like totally broken up about this chick he had sex with one time.
And he takes the pictures without looking.
Yeah, because he can't look at her. And then he has this monologue about how he's taken so many crime scene pictures, but it was never anyone he knew before.
Right.
That was his big dramatic moment in the movie. But that to me was probably the cringiest. Was everything around her being drowned in the bathtub.
Yeah. There's also a scene where there's a chase in a parking garage that ends with one of the bad guys holding a girl hostage.
Yes.
And Sting's character needs to choose whether or not to shoot the bad guy as he's holding this girl or not. And he ends up shooting the guy, and the girl lives, but the mom slaps him in the face anyway.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of crazy. It's like, look, I realize it's not the most ideal turn of events, but your kid's okay.
Yeah. I thought he was going to do the Keanu Reeves shoot the hostage bit.
Oh yeah. Like right through the shoulder.
Yeah, yeah. Or the RoboCop like between the legs bit.
Oh yeah. That would
one of those. That's what I thought he was going to do, but it just the guy wound up getting distracted, and then he was able to get the drop on him because of that.
Yeah. The main bad guy, at the beginning of the movie, like there's this chase, because they're trying to get this camera at the beginning, and like there's this chase that kind of goes into a restaurant, and the dude doesn't even try to hide himself. Like he just walks into the restaurant and is like, sorry to have interrupted your dinner, and then walks out. But nobody can find this guy. Nobody can get him. And but I mean, he's walking right into a public restaurant and introducing himself.
Yeah.
Hey, Sting and his brother are not very good detectives. What can I say? At one point, Sting plays the piano. Do you remember that scene, Leonard?
Oh, yes, because he's thinking that's when he wakes up from the nightmare about his dad, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Here's a lot of movies just give you exposition dumps. This movie does not. Like everything about the dad and the brother's relationship is completely vague. You have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And even at the end when they kind of reconcile and they sort of show you the flashback of what happened, it's still kind of murky.
And you end up thinking back when you find out what happened. And you're like, wait, so Sting was mad at him, but it ended up not being this brother's fault, really.
No, it was his fault. Dad, so the brother was on a sting operation against the guy, and no pun intended. So Sting and the dad go into because they're like, my brother is an idiot, and we have to be there to bail him out. But it's but the bad guys know, oh hey, those dudes are cops. And the whole thing falls apart because they were there. So, and probably the last plot point I want to mention is that in with the bad guys is the agent for Daisy Fuentes and her brother.
Right.
And we meet this dude one time for 2 minutes.
I believe this guy has the great name Griffin.
And then later on in the movie, he pops up as being in on it. And I'm glad they said, I think Daisy Fuentes says something like, I can't believe Griffin, my agent, is blah 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 doing this or whatever. Because I would have no idea who the dude was.
Right.
Because he's in the movie. Like, well, Sting goes and says, "Oh, hey, this guy, your dude died," and he's like, "Oh, I don't know anything about that. He was supposed to be in Amsterdam or wherever he was, blah blah blah," and that's it. And then he shows up, a half hour, 45 minutes later in the film as being like the undercover dude that was setting everybody up. And that was the picture that was on the film roll. It was this really blurry picture, but they sent it to the FBI to get like. And here's the thing: I know this from working with photographers. You can't do that. Like the zoom and enhance cliche in movies, like you can't do that. If the picture's blurry, the picture's blurry.
Right.
But they were able to clarify it enough that you could see the reflection in the window of this dude. So that's how Sting knew it was the Griffin was part of it, was with the bad guys. But that was like, they were trying to, I guess, throw a clever twist in there that wasn't that clever.
Yeah, Griffin was played by Gerard Plunkett, and he did look familiar to me. I'm trying to think of like what else he's been in. Not that it makes much of a difference. So Mark Sobel directed a lot of TV stuff. He directed an episode of Together, the series. He directed an episode of Total Recall 2070, Leonard.
Okay, I remember that being on.
Yeah, Seventh Heaven he directed an episode of. Malibu Shores, The Outer Limits, all that great stuff. So he didn't have a very, prestigious career in movies and television, but that's all right. So Leonard, we're going to, we'll do the old Siskel and Ebert rating.
Okay.
It's, it's about time that somebody brought that back. Might as well be us.
Mm-hmm.
So Leonard, you going thumbs up or thumbs down on Shutterspeed?
I'm going thumbs down.
Yeah, I'm going to go thumbs down as well. This was, even for a TV movie, this was not very good. Sting could do certain things, I feel like, but they expected too much from a wrestler here who has not had a lot of on-screen acting experience in this way anyway. There was a lot of drama stuff that was not good. The plot took too long to get to the payoff, and by the time the payoff came, we didn't really care. By the end of this, you will start nodding your head, because it does get dull. Leonard was bored after 20 minutes, so that just gives you a little bit of an idea. But it is on YouTube, either in full with commercials, as Leonard mentioned earlier, or in parts if you care to do it that way. But let us know if you have seen it or choose to see it. Maybe you recorded it on a VHS tape. Who knows? Maybe somebody still has it there. But there aren't too many, shots from this TV movie. I'm sure I already put up the poster that's on IMDb, which is fantastic. Shot Daisy Fuentes and Sting. I would like to get a poster of this and have him autograph it. What do you think?
He does do shows. He was at the Chillicothe show back in September that I mentioned that I had gone to, and he was charging, I think it was $125 just to look at him. Like just to be in the line to get something signed was like $125.
Yeah, that's a lot. It would be worth it though to have him sign this just to see his reaction, because I guarantee nobody else has done that.
Yeah, that would totally be worth it. And while we're here, we should mention that at the time of this recording, they just recently released the September show. I said September, but this was just a few months ago, the show that Sting was at. But the September show that they're doing is Bret the Hitman Hart's going to be their headliner.
Yeah, and I need to find some obscure movie that he's been in.
There's a few. I know he did the the Lonesome Dove TV show.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a poster for that.
Yeah, and other than that, I don't know. We'd have to look up his filmography, but that's exciting that he's going.
By the way, I'd be willing to review episodes of Thunder in Paradise on here. I think we could make that happen.
I'm down. I'm sure those are easy to find. Like I said, I still have the box set of the movie signed by Chris Lemon.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get Chris Lemon to come on.
Yeah, maybe he could share his wrestling thoughts.
Yeah,
what his favorite. Yeah, we'll track down Chris Lemon.
Chris Lemon. I had his contact at one point. I don't think I have it anymore because this was years ago.
Yeah, and if anybody's listening to this or watching this and wanted to comment on Eric Bischoff's podcast, ask him about Shutterspeed.
Yeah, I mean, he was involved. He produced it. He had some involvement. So.
Yeah, I would love, because I don't. On a side note, I don't think that the movie that he is a part of in some way, the Hogan biopic, I don't know if that's happening now. Not because of anything Hogan related, but Chris Hemsworth, I know, had that some early test done that shows he's a big candidate for Alzheimer's or dementia, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what his active future will hold, but it would have been cool to see that happen at some point. So anyway, yeah, comment Eric Bischoff, ask him a question, Shutterspeed. So let us know what you thought of it. Check out our other episodes, our full-length episodes, our segment surgery, stupid questions, random match reviews. We are available wherever you listen to podcasts. So for Leonard, my name is Chad, and we will see you next time. Alexa, we'll see you out.